The Anthrax dragnet. Investigators say they're closing in on the location where 2 anthrax letters may have been mailed. And there are 2 new cases of the disease at a New Jersey post office and at CBS News in New York. U.S. forces say they're hitting their targets in Afghanistan, but can they break up the Taliban? And Eye on America, a new challenge for the Postal Service, protecting their workers and you.
This is the CBS Evening News with Dan Rather reporting from CBS News headquarters in New York.
Good evening. 2 more cases of anthrax were confirmed today, both of them women. One works in a New Jersey post office that handled 2 letters containing anthrax. The other works in my office as my assistant here at CBS News in New York. Both women contracted skin anthrax. Both are being treated and doing well. The source of the anthrax at CBS has not been determined, but we are now the 3rd major television network news organization to be targeted, and it brings to 6 the number of people diagnosed with anthrax this month. As for who may be behind all this, CBS's Jim Stewart has the latest tonight on the investigation.
More and more, all of the recent anthrax outbreaks are starting to look like the work of the same person or persons. Investigators now say the same type of anthrax spore seen in the first case discovered in Florida was also in the letter sent to NBC headquarters and the one sent to Senator Daschle. Tests are still being conducted on the type spore used in other cases, including the one today at CBS News. And say officials, upon further examination, the spores don't look to be as high grade as first thought.
It looked to be run-of-the-mill. They're sensitive to all antibiotics.
Those discoveries led officials to try to put the anthrax threat in perspective by laying out all the numbers. Thus far, the FBI has responded to 2,500 suspected anthrax threats across the country, but has actually found the bacteria in only 3 locations: Boca Raton, Florida, Washington, D.C., and the New York, New Jersey area. And although 4,000 people have been tested, just 36 were found to be exposed but disease-free. Only 6 others were actually infected, one of whom died. Meanwhile, the FBI and Postal Service announced a $1 million reward for whoever mailed the letters.
The mailing of anthrax is a terrorist act. It is a terrorist act.
And sources say investigators have narrowed it down to 2 post offices in the Trenton, New Jersey area the letters were mailed from, and are fanning out to all the street mailboxes nearby. On the assumption that the suspect may have dosed himself preventively with antibiotics, they're also checking pharmacies in the area for purchases in mid-September.
And although they have no definite evidence one way or the other, investigators still can't shake the belief that this may turn out to be a domestic criminal, perhaps acting alone. As one official speculated, think the Unabomber with anthrax. Dan?
Jim Stewart reporting live from Washington. As for the newest cases of anthrax, the 2 women diagnosed today, CBS News correspondent Richard Schlesinger has that part of the story for you.
This time, the attention focused on a member of the CBS Evening News staff. She was diagnosed with the less serious skin form of the disease and is expected to make a full recovery. Unlike previous cases where authorities identified actual letters contaminated with anthrax, so far no letter has been discovered here. But investigators say this attack probably took place around the time NBC and ABC News were also contaminated.
The pattern here appears to be essentially identical to the pattern in the other 2 news organizations, and by all intents and purposes happened sometime in late September.
Outside Trenton, at the postal facility that handled contaminated letters sent to NBC and Senator Tom Daschle, one worker was diagnosed with anthrax and another tested positive for exposure to the disease. Who's behind the attacks? Former FBI agent Rick Smith says whoever it is knows more about how to make people scared than how to make them sick.
If you had the ability to contaminate 1 million people, you would do it. If you don't have that ability, you would send letters to Congress and the media to get the most reaction, the most bang for your buck.
The reaction is far more widespread than the disease, and officials are spending as much time urging people to calm down as they are discussing details of the latest outbreak.
People should just not overreact to this. They should just, I know it's hard to say this, but you got to keep saying it, that is to relax and deal with it, work with it.
Well, it's easier to work with the threat of anthrax now than it was just a few days ago. The evening news worked out of this studio all day. We were never told to evacuate because officials now have more experience with the disease than they did before when other newsrooms were emptied after anthrax was discovered. Dan?
Richard Schlesinger, thanks. On Capitol Hill, the main buildings and hearing rooms were closed today for anthrax testing. It was standing room only as senators tried to conduct businesses in tiny offices. House members adjourned yesterday. They'll be gone for nearly a week. And Minority Leader Dick Gephardt told CBS's Bob Schieffer today it may be a while before any of the members get all the offices reopened.
It'll take some weeks. This is a major job to decontaminate. They may have to decontaminate the part of the ventilation system. That's hard to do.
You and other House leaders have taken some real heat today in several newspapers around the country for deciding to adjourn yesterday. Are you still convinced you did the right thing?
I'm confident we did the right thing. They could have never started these tests if we hadn't gotten the people out of the buildings.
Dick Gephardt with Bob Schieffer. Tests on more than 900 Capitol Hill staffers have turned up no new anthrax exposures beyond the 31 Senate employees previously identified as exposed but not infected with the disease. Like Congress, federal health officials have come under some criticism for keeping too low a profile and not doing enough to clear up confusion and keep the public informed. CBS News medical correspondent Elizabeth Caledon reports tonight how public health officials are now moving to address that.
A critical thing for about 40 doctors at UCLA's Children's Hospital took a break from busy rounds this afternoon to get a quick lesson on how to find anthrax.
We can all be experts in it in a pretty short period of time, and you will be before this broadcast is over.
These are stressful days for the nation's physicians. They are being interrogated about signs, symptoms, contagion, and treatment of a disease few know anything about.
And it's not something we commonly see. It's not something most physicians ever see in a lifetime.
This is the first time since anthrax appeared in Florida that the Centers for Disease Control has issued any type of guidance to the nation's doctors.
Should I order that extra laboratory test, as unlikely as it might be?
The agency's silence has been a concern even for former employees watching the crisis unfold.
We all are concerned about the lack of certain information that we'd like to have more immediate.
Today's unusual video conference is an effort to streamline information and give doctors the right diagnostic tools.
You know, you can always say, do it sooner, do it later, but if you're not providing adequate amount of information for people to act on, and your information is preliminary and incomplete, it's a question of what is most useful to people, and we think what we're providing today will be most useful to practicing doctors.
The seminar focused on detecting the bacteria and finding early symptoms. Doctors were advised to be suspicious, test for anthrax, and report to public health officials.
But it is detectable, diagnosable, treatable, and doesn't spread person to person.
The hope is today's video conference will change the sense that the government is not organized and that doctors don't know what to do. More conferences are planned as the medical community's level of experience with anthrax grows. Dan?
Elizabeth Caledon, thanks. The new Director of Homeland Security, Tom Ridge, said today the government is seeking to acquire 300 million doses of smallpox vaccine. He did not say how long that might take. He did say the Public Health Service would decide the health risks versus the benefits of giving the vaccine. About air travel security, Ridge sided with House Republican leaders who oppose federalizing airport security workers. In Afghanistan today, U.S. jets struck the center of Kabul, while to the south, witnesses report dozens of bombs fell on the Taliban stronghold of Kandahar. And CBS News national security correspondent David Martin reports the U.S. Navy can now put even more firepower in the Afghan skies.
The U.S. now has a third carrier, the Theodore Roosevelt, flying strikes against Afghanistan, attacking everything from headquarters buildings to individual tanks. The strikes have now damaged or destroyed virtually every fixed target of military value. But that alone will not break the Taliban.
You can find buildings that are used as headquarters or storage areas for artillery and the like. But you cannot really do sufficient damage.
The most valuable targets are the leaders of the Taliban and of Osama bin Laden's al-Qaeda network. And the U.S. is shooting at them every chance it gets.
we have seen some movement of what we believe to be the al-Qaeda forces, and they have been specifically targeted.
Rumsfeld says the determination to avoid scenes like these of civilians apparently killed by American bombs makes the terrorist hunt more difficult.
The al-Qaeda and the Taliban are using mosques, they're using heavily populated areas for their command and control and for their gathering places purposely.
In northern Afghanistan, F-15 Eagles, probably the most accurate ground attack plane, again struck frontline Taliban troops. And Rumsfeld says more aid for the rebels fighting the Taliban is on the way.
What's different today is they have some help. They're going to have some help in food, they're going to have some help in ammunition, they're going to have some help in air support and assistance.
More and more Taliban soldiers, including some of their commanders, are going over to the rebel side. But there is no sign the rebels have yet scored any breakthroughs. In fact, they were driven back from one key airfield they are trying to take. David Martin, CBS News, the Pentagon.
A man accused of plotting terrorism in France reportedly told a judge that Osama bin Laden's al-Qaeda terror network is not independent, but, quote, an integral part of the Taliban regime in Afghanistan. The Associated Press says the French-Algerian suspect testified that since May, more than 3 months before the September 11th attacks, Taliban leaders have held veto power over al-Qaeda operations. President Bush is halfway around the world tonight to attend a summit of Asian-Pacific nations. CBS's John Roberts reports the president is in Shanghai trying to help ensure that these nations, China especially, stay in the fold in the coalition to fight terror.
Shortly after touching down in Shanghai, President Bush made a sharp turn in U.S.-China relations. A regime the White House has often been at loggerheads with suddenly became, in the Secretary of State's words, enlightened.
We have an excellent relationship with China right now, and I think as a result of President Bush's visit, that relationship will grow and improve and thrive.
The language is light years away from the sharp rhetoric Mr. Bush used during last spring's spy plane incident and the campaign when he declared China a strategic competitor. It is crucial that Beijing now become a strategic ally in the war on terrorism, says America's former ambassador to China, James Lilly.
He's got to talk to these people. He's got to explain our position. He's got to try to get them on board. I think this is absolutely critical.
The White House wants not only moral and political support from China, but whatever information Beijing may have on bin Laden's network. China will ask for solidarity in its own fight with terrorism and may also seek concessions over human rights in Taiwan. When he meets later today with Chinese President Jiang Zemin, President Bush is expected to declare a new beginning to an old relationship, keeping in mind the lessons of the past.
People fall in love again. And there are people in the United States, even in our government, that get very romantic when China gets nice. And the Chinese can play this like a yo-yo.
The White House insists it will not budge on issues like human rights in exchange for China's support for the war on terrorism. The president wants to build an image of cooperation, not compromise. John Roberts, CBS News, Shanghai.
A federal judge in New York City today sentenced 4 convicted terrorists to life in prison without parole for bombing 2 U.S. embassies in Africa. Security was tight at the courthouse, just a few blocks from the rubble of the World Trade Center. Prosecutors say Osama bin Laden personally ordered the 1998 attacks, which killed 224 people, including 12 Americans. Next here on the CBS Evening News, Eye on America. You've got mail. A new challenge for the Postal Service to make sure it is safe. Tonight's Eye on America is a hard news look at something most of us rarely give a second look until now. The mail we open every day. A few high-profile cases of anthrax by letter sent to specific targets have raised questions. CBS's Byron Pitts went looking for answers about what the U.S. Postal Service is and is not doing.
Across America, from postal workers to post offices, there are symbols of patriotism on the outside, signs of precaution on the inside. Employees who handle the nation's 680 million pieces of mail daily now have the option of wearing plastic gloves and masks.
The mood is really calm but careful.
Caution after letters laced with anthrax were delivered and opened in offices in Florida, New York, and Washington. All of the mail that enters Manhattan passes through here, 21 million pieces per day. And along with every envelope, the realization the U.S. Postal Service does not have the resources to inspect every item.
Can you guarantee, with the volume you deal with, that anthrax or some other biological chemical won't go through here?
Well, I don't think anyone can guarantee anything these days.
And now a postal worker in New Jersey has tested positive for anthrax. So like every other company in the country, the question facing the Postal Service, how do we protect our employees, our customers, the American public?
This is really a tragedy in terms of the Postal Service.
Postmaster General John Potter says new internal safety measures are in place, and postcards with safety tips will go out to all customers. 137 million addresses this weekend.
The key here is what happens with the American public. If they continue to use the mail, if they continue to have confidence in the mail, we will be okay. And we're counting on Americans to do that.
For now, the post office remains the cheapest way to move the mail. Analysts say prices could go up to cover the cost of new security measures. FedEx, for example, requires an ID with every package.
You can send things anonymously to the post office. That's literally why all the packages laden with anthrax have been delivered via the post office.
Neither snow nor rain goes the motto, but that's the weather. This is war. In New York, Byron Pitts for Eye on America.
On the CBS Market Watch, a federal ban on internet taxes will expire this weekend. A move in Congress to extend the ban died today in a dispute over charging out-of-state sales taxes on internet purchases. Stocks closed mixed today. The Dow lost 69 points. The Nasdaq was up 6. Ahead on the CBS Evening News, the next stop could be Afghanistan. The Screaming Eagles of the 101st Airborne prepare for battle.
The anthrax attacks. Tomorrow, see Fighting Fear with the Facts, a special report that will help you put panic to rest. America on Guard on the CBS Evening News with Dan Rather.
In the Middle East, bombs and gun battles killed at least 7 people one day after an Israeli cabinet minister was assassinated. The murdered official was buried with military honors in Jerusalem today. In the West Bank, a car explosion killed 3 Palestinians, including a militia commander on Israel's most wanted list. Japan's parliament today authorized the use of defense troops to support the U.S.-led anti-terror campaign in Afghanistan. The legislation limits Japanese military units to transport and supply missions in non-combat areas. That keeps it within the bounds of the pacifist constitution Japan adopted following World War II. From D-Day and the Battle of the Bulge to Vietnam and Desert Storm, the Screaming Eagles of the U.S. Army's 101st Airborne Division have been among the world's most elite fighting units. And now, CBS's Bob McNamara reports they're getting ready to fight again.
Through a night vision lens, soldiers of the 101st Airborne Division simulate a helicopter and ground assault on an enemy-held town. Monitored by infrared cameras, the exercise drills combat units in the peril and possibility of urban warfare. Not just fighting door to door, but room to room.
The tasks that I train this force on here are similar tasks they'll have to do should they go to Afghanistan or anywhere.
Though waged with blanks and scheduled long before the September 11th terror attacks, the mock battle took on a state of real war purpose.
It's good because it teaches you the realism of it, how violent it is, and how hard of a fight it is to take a town.
At military bases across this country,
if I get within range, I can reach out and touch somebody.
As units ready in case of a call-up, combat training has intensified for those who fight on the ground and in the air.
That's what I've trained 13 years in the Air Force to do, is go do those types of missions. So would I like to do it? You bet.
A creed of the combat trainer is, the more you sweat in peacetime, the less you bleed in war.
So we train good here, we're going to fight good over in Afghanistan.
And for soldiers who could be called to combat duty any day, it is not peacetime anymore. Bob McNamara, CBS News, Fort Polk, Louisiana.
Now, the same caltrate that helps fight bone loss may help your colon too. In a recent study, caltrate helped reduce the risk of recurrence of colon polyps, a risk factor for colon cancer. The same caltrate you take for your bones, now for colon health too.
Tired of struggling down glass after glass of powdered fiber for regularity?
This person voted out of Survivor Africa and find out what really went on. Wake up to what's happening tomorrow morning on The Early Show with Bryant Gumbel and Jane Clayson.
What happened to a respected and loyal colleague and beloved friend here at CBS News today drove home the point in a very personal way that it has been just over 5 weeks now since everything changed and the threat of terror in this country became a real part of everyday life. The most visible symbol is a scarred piece of New York City where the World Trade Center stood until murderers brought it down September 11th. Vice President Dick Cheney made his first visit today to what many call Ground Zero. The recovery workers refer to it simply as the site. Cheney praised them for the, quote, tremendous job they're doing, a job that goes on round the clock. So far, 458 bodies have been recovered, more than 4,500 still officially listed as missing. And while the threat of terror, whether through the air or the mail, is with us, always now, fear need not be. The rescue workers who gave their lives taught us that with their courage. And that's part of our world tonight. We invite you to join us again tomorrow for the CBS Evening News. Dan Rather reporting. Good night.
For news 24 hours a day, CBS.com on the internet and on our interactive partner, America Online, at keyword CBS News.
Fighting fear with the facts, the truth about anthrax, tomorrow. Experience CBS News.